Okay, it is the Friday live stream, take 2. So apologies for our slight technical issues at the official start. So we're starting again. I'll start a bit slow just to give people time to join. Then we'll jump straight into the markets bit. I think I need to do the risk warning. I need to do that because it's a new session. If you can't hear what's being said, make sure your volume slider on YouTube is switched up, obviously, and make sure the volume's okay. This is our weekly recap and market outlook. This presentation is only for educational purposes. This presentation does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones and Capital.com accept no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. Spread bets and CFDs are complex instruments and come with a high risk of losing money rapidly due to leverage. 71.2% of retail investor accounts lose money when spread betting and or trading CFDs with this provider. You should consider how spread bets and CFDs work and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Right, that's the risk warning done. We've got the zero spread offer today. We covered that already. Zero spread if you're trading pound against the dollar. We'll take a look at that in a sec. Of course, if ever there's a problem with these live streams or you can't make it, there's always the recording. So if you're watching the recording over the weekend and you tried to attend live, apologies for that. We did have some issues. Important events for next week. We did those. UK unemployment Tuesday. European GDP Wednesday. Thursday, US GDP. Stock markets, all-time highs again in the USA. That should not be a surprise. EU indices, a bit weaker, but coming back on Friday. New lows for the year for gold. We'll take a look at that. Bitcoin, new highs through 50,000 on Bitcoin. Crude oil, it's come off the last couple of days, but pushed through $60 over the last week. Pound against the dollar, really hot market this week, I think, the pound. Near a 3-year high, trading above 140. Euro dollar continues to reverse recent weakness. So as usual, how we do this, I take a look at our usual selection of markets and then I'll go through the questions and look at any markets you want looking at. Please don't spam the chat box with your market. Someone was doing it last week for silver. Don't do that. I will get to them eventually. Put it in once and I promise you, I'll pick up on it. But we'll go through the usual stuff first. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed, if you could subscribe to our channel, that'd be great. Okay, and I was saying that it's quite strange how people will look at markets that are boring, and I use silver as an example, which I think clearly has had excitement in the past, but I think it's really boring at the moment. And they miss out on great opportunities. And I think some fantastic moves in copper is a great example of a market that I think when we did a video in the past, hardly anybody watched it. So we don't do it anymore. But look at this trend in copper. And I said that some of my biggest winners recently, sugar is my biggest, most profitable trade in the last 3 months. And it's just fantastic market, sugar. I've got absolutely no idea about the fundamentals of sugar, but the trend has been absolutely incredible. So I think it's an important lesson to perhaps look at markets you wouldn't normally look at. Don't get fixated on one market like silver or gold or the euro if it's boring. There are always other opportunities out there. Anyway, that was one of my little trading tips for today. But let's start off with pound against the dollar. We did do the pound against the dollar. There's a video went up yesterday, pound against the dollar. And I said, the trend is up. It's been a great run, pound against dollar. Here we are at 140.16. Best levels since, scroll a little back, April 2018. So we're at a 34-month high, pound against the dollar. And there's another interesting trading tip here. If you were on last week's live stream, or you watched the recording since then, we did 2 trades. We did a trade on the cannabis index, which is currently losing £45, and we did a trade on pound against the dollar, which is up £238 since last week. There's a great lesson there. 2 trades, 1 winner, 1 loser. It's not about being right all the time. it's when you're right, you make more than you lose when you're wrong. So that pound against the dollar trade, it was this time last week, 3 o'clock last week, buying in at 138.18 for 100 quid risk. So it's made more than twice the risk. We bought the cannabis index as well. That's dropped. But it shows you, I think, when it comes to trading, we know that most people lose. It's no secret. It's in our risk warning at the beginning. And I think most people lose. Well, I know that most people lose. One of the big reasons most people lose, their winners are smaller than their losers. So even if they're right 60% of the time, 70% of the time, if you're losing 200 and only making 100, you're never going to make money. So there's a great example there in that pound against the dollar trade. If you can't hear, if you can slide the volume on your YouTube volume slider, because I've got the microphone about 3 millimeters away from my mouth, so hopefully the volume is okay. Right, pound against the dollar. So what can you say? It's a great trend. 140 was a big barrier. We had quite messy trading, it felt. Beginning of this year, it kept trying to break 137, could not get through it. And then finally, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen this sustained move. And here we are at the highs up here. So I think for me, in the short to medium term, the next obvious target is a run back to these 2018 highs, just above 143. So maybe 300 points from here. And then it will be interesting what happens up here. Would I want to buy it now at 140? I'd probably perhaps be more tempted to see if we get a sell-off next week. But then what do I know? So at the moment, we do have that trade running from last week. I need to move the stop up on that trade. So I'm going to put my stop on that trade at 139. So we'll lock in some of the profit. I think about half of that profit. And we'll leave the trade running and see what happens. But a really strong week for pound against the US dollar. And euro dollar, not as strong. But when we looked at this last week, let's get rid of the RSI for now. I said I thought it was interesting because the market had sold off early Feb. Rallies, breaks out of this correction almost. Came back to it over the last couple of days. And we've seen strength since Thursday of this week. So for me, this here is quite a bullish, for me anyway, potential reversal pattern during February for the euro. So for me, that trend on the euro since March last year is still up. My target would be for a run back up to 123.50-ish. And for me, I'd only really change my bullish view if we drifted below the lows for February so far. So we're seeing again this week the US dollar coming under some pressure. We're seeing some strength in euro dollar, pound against the dollar. Let's have a quick look at the dollar index. Here's the dollar index, the one I always talk about, which is the dollar against a basket of different currencies. Is it turning around? I don't know. It's had a bad couple of days. I do wonder, are we going to see further dollar strength the rest of this year? We'll see what happens. I think for the US dollar index, I do have a trade on the dollar index that's currently losing money. I got a stop loss below the low of January. And if it takes that out, I'd completely change my mind about the dollar maybe turning around this year. But the dollar index is always an interesting one to watch. And what I want to look at as well before we move off currencies is the Australian dollar. Again, this is one we don't normally look at. Big move today in the Aussie dollar. And I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, US dollar weakness, because we're seeing most currencies up against the US dollar the last couple of days. And also this commodity strength that we're seeing in the likes of copper and other markets that we look at. The Australian economy is very much a commodity-driven economy. So I think we're seeing a bit of a double whammy for the Aussie dollar. So the Aussie dollar trading back to levels not seen since March 2018. So we're at a 35-month high in the Aussie dollar. So I do have some trades on the Aussie dollar because the market, clearly we've got a trend. And if you've watched any of the videos that we do, I'm a big fan of following trends. So a breakout today on the Aussie dollar. So I think it's going to be a really interesting market to watch next week. Aussie dollar and pound against the dollar and euro to a lesser extent as well. but a really strong finish for the week so far for these markets. As we are doing things against the dollar, let's take a look at Bitcoin. What can you say? Bitcoin through 50,000. The trend is still up, isn't it? I've got a confession to make. I actually bought Bitcoin this week when it broke 50,000. If you've attended any of these, you know how I think it's a crazy market, but I'm sick of saying if it breaks this level, it's going to go up and not being in. So I thought I'll buy it. So that could well mark the top that I've finally thrown in the towel and bought it. But you can't argue with the strength, can you? Clearly, as a UK person, I can't trade a derivative of it because it is banned by the FCA in the UK. So I had to buy like a physical thing. But there you go. So it's trading at 53,000 now. You can't argue with that strength. I can't argue with the strength. The trend is up. We've got, if it's sold off, where would we be looking for a bounce? I'd be looking at these lows following the break through 45,000. So the lows down at around 44,000. If we flip it over to an hourly chart, I'm not one of these people who believes that Bitcoin is going to go to 1 million. I'm just jumping on the trend for now. But lots of pockets of support for Bitcoin. The market's pushed higher. The trend for Bitcoin, even in the last hour, Bitcoin set all-time highs again. So, as a devoted trend follower like me, cannot argue with the strength in Bitcoin. Okay, so that's that. Let's have a look at we touched some currencies, loads going on. Pound against the dollar, Aussie dollar, really interesting markets. Let's take a look at gold and oil. Now these are markets they're always really popular on our channel. So we always know if we put a video on gold or a video on silver, we're going to get loads of views. The point I would make is, I think like I've said, I think they have been, particularly gold. I closed a trade out today, a losing trade on gold. I closed it out today. I think they've been quite difficult markets to trade. And look where gold is. Gold is trading pretty much now where it was at the end of November. So I did think in early January, this was a breakout in gold and we were going to go ba-boom all the way through $2,000 again, back up to the all-time highs. That hasn't happened, and we are back here. I think now it's interesting though. Maybe this is the trade we'll do today. I think this is the aggressive trade on gold. If gold is going to rally from anywhere, then we are here. We are back on gold. These lows from the 30th of November down at 1763, and the market, rallied a couple of $100 off there. We're back here again. So we are back to traded 1760 today, gold. So I think if there was an aggressive trade to do, this is it. And also, the RSI is oversold down here. If you believe RSIs, we're oversold. So let's do the trade. I think this is almost like the last chance for gold to have a bit of a rally from here. Otherwise, perhaps we slip back into the range from April to June last year. So perhaps we see it slip back towards 1700. So let's put a trade on gold and let's see how it works out. We can view it in a week's time. So it's been a pretty volatile day for gold. Let's have a look at the range and I'll figure out my stop loss. So it traded down to 1760, 1 o'clock this morning. It's jumped as high as 1790. Let's say I'm going to trade it with a $40 stop loss below 1760. So I go 1720. There we go. I think that might be too far actually. No, that'll do. So let's say 1720. So I'm going to put a stop in at 1720. I normally risk £100 on these live trades. So let's set that up. 2.1. There we go. So I'm going to buy 2.1 where it's trading now, 1783-ish. Stop at 1720, risk of £95. Let's send that through. There we go. In. So I bought gold. So I think it's interesting going into next week now, gold. After a lot of chop, we are back down to where we were a week ago. So I don't have any positions in gold. I think there is a trade in this account, the one we use for the videos. There might be a trade. There's the trade we just did on gold. And there's an older trade from the 18th of January. So there's that one we just put on. And there's the older trade down there. So let's see how that works out. But I think if we see gold slip below today's low, 1760, it looks really weak. It would be the lowest it's been since June last year, and perhaps we're going to see a deeper sell-off. Of course, the longer-term trend is still up. Going back to August 2018, that trend is still up, but that trend line's not coming in till 1500. So let's see what happens with gold from here, but I've definitely been wrong-footed by gold this year. Let's take a look at silver. Silver is what's it doing? If you look at it on a daily chart, silver is at $27 is where it was, I think, a week ago. When we were talking about silver, it was here a week ago. So it's been up, it's been down. For me, that trend in silver is still up. That little recovery trend since November is still moving higher. So off the lows, still okay. It's arguably a trade down here, silver, buying at 27.37. We've got good support running from 26-ish, 25.90, 26. Good support again at 24. I think I did do the video we put out this week on silver. I put an order in the video to buy at 27.30 and it got filled on the 16th of February. So a few days ago. So we do have a trade running on silver that's up £4 so far. I think that the silver looks a stronger market than gold at the moment, and that recovery is still okay. So in medium term, a run back to 30 would still be my target, but nothing much has changed from a week ago. And this is what I mean when it comes to by boring markets. Yeah, it hasn't moved that much in a week. Whereas you look at something like pound against the dollar, we've seen some really good moves over the last week. Silver just looks a little bit dull, but people do get excited about it. I think it's this obsession about there being a bit of a conspiracy with silver and about the institutions holding the price down, and it should be $500, whatever. It's just a market like any other. So that's we've done currencies, silver and gold and Bitcoin. Let's take a look at crude oil. Let's bring up the oil chart. So we do have some trades running on oil. It's been, for this account, the account we use for the videos, it's been the best market this year. We've taken some profits on the sell-off over the last couple of days. Still got a couple of trades running from the 5th of Jan from $48 and from the 8th of February at $57.75. Stops in at 58 and 58.50. The market's currently $60. I do think, and I think it's interesting because I think it's crazy that crude oil is up here, but it is up here. It touched yesterday $62 a barrel. So we saw crude oil at its best levels yesterday. We have to go back more than a year. First week of January, second week of January last year. So for me, I would still be buying the dips on crude oil. Can't argue with this trend. As crazy as we may think it is, just this year, the price of crude is up about 20%. Actually, no, sorry, just this month. What am I saying? Just this month. It ended January at $52. It's traded as high as 62. So we've seen almost a 20% move this month in crude oil to the high. So for me, that trend is still up in crude. I would be looking next week for a retest of 62. Clearly, none of this is financial advice. No one's got a crystal ball. We had a little bit of weakness yesterday below the lows of the 16th of Feb, but the market's bounced back. It didn't stay below there long, and the market's come back. So I've still got in my own account. I'm still long oil in my own account. There's the trend from, where's that go back? Where am I taking that trend line from? November last year when it was $34 a barrel. So for me, the trend is still up. Even if it sells back to 56, that trend on crude is still up. And I'm sure plenty of people will have been going short all the way up because they think, well, it can't go any higher, surely. But the market continues higher. Someone asked about natural gas, another market that has very little interest whenever we do a video on it. I've talked a bit about natural gas. I'm currently long natural gas still, and there's all this stuff going on in the States with the weather, and there's the power crisis in Texas, all of that sort of stuff, isn't there? I don't really understand the fundamentals about natural gas. I just trade the momentum and market sentiment, as with anything. We've talked quite a bit about this year because there's always quite a bit of interest in the live streams on natural gas. Correction off the highs. Big support from August last year at 220. Breaks out, comes back, retests, doesn't quite retest the lows, and away we go. And this is the trend in natural gas. So quite a strong bounce back today. So for me, I'm long. I'm still long. think if we can, it can be a really volatile market when it starts moving natural gas. But for me, perhaps if we can break through yesterday's high. Yesterday's high was about 305. It's currently 301. I'll be looking for a move up, perhaps back up to the mid-November highs at 320. So it's always I must admit, I don't really understand this as a market. But look at that trend. Look at that trend. What a thing of beauty that trend is. So yesterday, drifted down to 290 yesterday. Comes back to the trend line. Bang, 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 bang. The other reason people lose money is they can't follow trends. So great example of the trend in natural gas there. So let's see what happens next week. So for me, I think if it starts to lose this 280 to 290 area, have to worry about a deeper sell-off. But a really interesting market. Okay, so what else have we done? We have stock markets. We haven't done stock markets. So let's take a look at the S&P. S&P 500, the broader US stock market. Again, I think plenty of people will think, well, how can this market be so high? And if you're trading it, look, it just is. I think as a trader, my job is not to reason why a market's done one thing or another, is to try and make money out of it. And the trend is, I think, clearly up. So we did see earlier this week, the 16th of Feb, earlier this week, all-time highs again for the S&P 500. The market has sold off for a couple of days. It looks like we're having a bit more of a balanced day today. So for me, I'd still be looking to buy dips in this market. We're a long way away from that trend line that goes back in March, but lots of short-term support, 38.75 for this month on the S&P. You can't argue with the trend. If we have a look at the Nasdaq, and I did see someone mention the FTSE. We'll take a look at the FTSE as well. So the Nasdaq, again, earlier this week, hit fresh all-time highs. We've sold off for a couple of days. Bit of stability today. It looks like 13,500. There's a bit of a level on the Nasdaq. Let's take a look at that. There we go. So we've had a few. You can see here, early Feb, spiky moves down to 13.5. Did blip through that level yesterday, but we've bounced back strongly today. So, trends in stock markets, for me at least, are still strong. So let's take a look at the FTSE, and also we'll have a look at the Nikkei. So let's bring up FTSE 100. The FTSE 100, as I often say, is always a bit of an odd one. But I would arguably, I'm long the FTSE anyway. I think I said last week I bought the FTSE because we came back and retested the old levels and blah, blah, blah. Sold off a bit over the last couple of days. Maybe I wouldn't buy it yet. But, perhaps again, we've rallied and we've sold off a bit. Perhaps we're stabilising. And then next week, these markets start to move higher again. So I think, we've had a couple of days of sell-offs in stock markets. It's no big deal, considering that US markets made all-time highs again this week. So let's take a look at the Nikkei, the Japanese market. Again, I've got a couple of trades on that running. All-time highs again. Not all-time highs, what am I talking about? Multi-year highs again this week for the Nikkei. I don't know how far back our Nikkei data goes, but that's the highest it's been in more than 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is. A great trend on the Nikkei as well. So some really strong trends for these markets out there. I'm going to go into the questions in a second. Before I do that, let me just talk about the markets I've been watching. I said that, commodities, absolutely fascinating markets. The move in copper today. We did mention this in a previous live stream. I think it was back here because I remember buying it and it didn't do anything for ages. But again, a great example of following a trend. We had this great trend in copper. I didn't get into any of my trades until about here, from October onwards. Yeah, and then a boring bit here where it goes nowhere, and then today, it's gone crazy today, but we're back up. I think it's an 8-year high on copper, 9-year high on copper up here. So really strong move. Hopefully there'll be a sort of pullback next week, because I would like to add to my position. It's great if you're in a trade and the market goes ballistic, but then you think, I want to buy some more. So do I get a pullback? But a really interesting market to watch next week, copper. What else did I say? Sugar has been the best. I've got absolutely no idea why sugar is going up, and I don't really care, to be honest. But a great trend in sugar. So again, today sugar is trading at nearly touched 18, best levels since March 2017. Cotton is another one that's been moving. We did do a video on cotton a few weeks ago. Absolutely no interest in it, but another great trend in cotton. There is talk about, Goldman Sachs have written about it being perhaps the start of a commodity super cycle. I don't know whether that's true or not, but again, cotton back up. It's only a 2.5 year high on cotton. But these markets that nobody really looks at because everyone's too busy looking at silver and euro against the dollar and stuff like that. Some really great trends in these other markets. And platinum was the other one. Platinum went crazy this week. It has cooled off a bit, platinum, but once again, he's a great trend in platinum off the March lows. Went a little bit crazy earlier in the week, but I wonder if we get a breakout again on platinum. I think it's quite hard to trade it when it goes as volatile as this. We'd be better off if we had a sell-off, but a really interesting market. I think if we did see a bit of a sell-off, a better trade there, I suppose, if we really thought platinum was going to fly, the aggressive place for a stop, I would put it, would be underneath the lows from a week ago, from the 12th of February, the other side of 1220 or 1200. But loads going on in commodities at the moment. Really interesting markets. Let's see how sustainable it is. So it's just a lot going on. But even for the normal markets, stuff to watch next week. Pound against the dollar, because we are up at 140, and crude oil, because it's broken out again to a 13-month high. Right, so what we'll do now, I will go through the questions. Before I do that, let's just put up my contact details. I think I'm a bit behind on my emails, so if you've emailed me and I haven't replied to you, I will get around to it. But find out more about Capital.com, go to Capital.com. Any questions, drop me an email, david.jones@Capital.com. Follow me on Twitter, @JonesTheMarkets. There we go. I mean, obviously, we can't do financial advice, but I'm quite happy to answer any general trading questions. Right, let's go back through the questions. Let's have a look. Copper. Yeah, so T-Base asked about copper. 4% move today. I don't think it will reverse, but I don't want to be a buyer at the top. What do you think? And that's the problem, isn't it? I suppose that what I do, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If I came into it next week, let's say we think, well, right, copper is just going ballistic still. I would see where it ends today, and I would, next week, if it breaks out to new highs again on Monday, just buy it, and then think, well, where's my stop going to go? And the closest I would want my stop would be the other side of the lows from just yesterday afternoon. So I think it is difficult, though, when you have a runaway market. If you're not in, where do you get in? Do you wait for a pullback, and the risk is the pullback never happens, of course, or you grit your teeth and buy in? And there's no perfect answer. But that would be one approach I would do, is have a relatively tight stop, But let's see what happens. But like you say, it's a massive move today. You can see the size of the candle compared to what it normally does. Massive move, so it is a tricky one. Can we look at cocoa? Do you know? I've been thinking about a trade on cocoa. I don't know why I haven't done it. This is why I'm watching it. I added it just this week to the list of things to watch, because I'm sure I traded it last year and got bored and closed the trade. But look at the trend. I already have the trend on there. Great trend in cocoa going back to 2017. So that's nearly 4 years, that trend in cocoa. Touched 3,000 or 30, whatever that number is, who cares? And I wondered, is it coming back to the trend line? So for me, actually, there's an argument for being a buyer of cocoa. And the question is, where would your stop go? I would want my stop the other side of these lows. But they are quite a way away. They're maybe 10% away from where the price is now. But if it's going to run back up, it's an interesting trade down here. A better trade is if it sells off over the next few weeks, more back to the longer term trend. But the long term trend for cocoa is definitely up. I think it is an interesting market, and I think it will go higher medium term. It's just how long do we get more of a sell-off? Is there a better entry point for cocoa? But it's a really interesting market, I think, that one. I haven't done a trade yet, but perhaps I need to. So let's see what happens. Silver, we looked at silver, boring market, silver at the moment. What are your thoughts on the GME and AMC? So this is the GameStop, isn't it? I think, like I said last week, I think it's all done and dusted. It's just, that when we had the GameStop short squeeze, blah, 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 that it's all gone that now. So, if anybody it was still holding GameStop from 300, good luck to you. Because, I think it's just gone. You can see just off the volatility here, it's just completely irrelevant, I think, now. There's going to be no, I would say, and I don't, I've got no crystal ball, but I think any hopes of a short squeeze are gone. That was the short squeeze. It's gone. So I don't, I think, and like I said last week, I think it is unfortunate that a lot of people's exposure to stock markets, their first experience of stock markets, will be participating in this AMC and GameStop short squeeze where the market went ballistic. Maybe they made some money, but most people probably are sitting on losses if they're still in, and that's not trading. That's just fruit machines, really, these sort of markets. So for me, I don't even bother reading any stuff about those anymore. So there we go. Would you take a look at gasoline? We had a look at that, didn't we? Natural gas, and I think that trend in natural gas is still going. I think coffee, I do have a trade in coffee. It is, out of all the trades I've got, it's the one that has been running the longest, and I am getting fed up of it. And so I moved my stop this week because it's just sideways. But like cocoa, the trend is up. I think I ended up buying, I think it was in the summer, maybe about here somewhere. So it's just done nothing. And I should have clearly been buying down here. So I still think the trend is up in coffee. Clearly, that longer term trend is up. I just don't know what I do here. So I do have a trade, and I've moved the stop to about 120 or something like that on coffee because I'm just bored of it now, and I should have got out of it a long time ago. But I think the better opportunity for coffee, if it sells off back towards the lows from November, for me would be the better opportunity. Clearly, it's got a bit of a problem, 130 to 135, 140. But the trend is up, but we haven't seen the same sort of moves that we've seen in some of the other softer commodities like sugar and cotton. So there we go. Can we look at cocoa? We had a look at cocoa. I had a look at coffee. There's a lot of interest in coffee and cocoa today. Thoughts on dollar yen? Yes, I said this last week, didn't I? That it should have been a buyer. I didn't buy it. I was looking at it just today, actually, dollar yen. And I think there's an opportunity next week, personally, I think, in dollar yen. So for me, that's the trend off the March 2020 highs. Breaks out of the trend, and we were looking at this, when was it, last week, the 12th, here, and I was saying I should have bought it earlier in the week, and then of course it did go up. But for me, I wonder if what we're going through now, these 3 days where the market dollar yen has sold off, so dollar weakness, is it a similar move to this move back here from the February the 5th? So for me, I think probably be a buyer of dollar yen next week if we see some support. So for me, the closest I'd have my stop, and I'll probably have it further away than this, but these lows from the 10th of February at 104.40. So yes, I agree with you. It's a buying opportunity in dollar yen. So I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch next week. So that's another currency pair to keep an eye on next week. And of course, but overall, we've got a weak US dollar, but clearly the yen has been weaker this year than the US dollar. Interesting market. We looked at gold. We did our little trade on gold. How's that doing? Where is it? Losing money. It's no good. Silver. We looked at silver. FTSE. We looked at FTSE. Could you explain again why when you were right you make more than when you were wrong? No. What you have to do with trading, the point I was making was we did 2 trades a week ago in this live stream. So we bought the US cannabis index, and it's currently losing 42 quid. And we bought pound against the dollar, which is currently making 244 pounds. And it's very important when you're trading. It's the classic cliche: cut your losses quickly, let your profits run. but most people don't. Most people, if they're losing money, will stick with the trade and hope it comes back, and they'll have a profit and they'll snatch at the profit. So that's why it's important to try and let your profits run. There was a question last week, I remember, someone asked, why don't you have targets for your trade? And it's because I want to try and run profits as much as possible. So you'll often see, I think if I went back through all the trades done on this account since we started in August 2019, I'm going to guess that I've been wrong more than I've been right. So I bet my hit rate is less than 50%, but it still made money. And it makes money because I've had some big winning trades, like crude oil, for example, is a good example this year of big winners. Yeah, so it's important when you're trading, if your losses are bigger than your profits, you will struggle to be profitable. Okay, so it's 75% of people lose, don't forget, 75%, whatever it is. And one of the big reasons they lose, because their losses are bigger than their profits. And until you get that right, until you have the discipline to cut your losses quickly and let your profits run, I think you'll always struggle to make money trading. Natural gas, blah, blah, blah. Apple. Let's have a look at Apple. Yeah, I think Apple has been quite weak, hasn't it? But the trend is up. So I think, like I was saying last week, we were looking at it last week and it was doing this, wasn't it? I would be a buyer. I would just be looking for a buying opportunity in Apple. The trend is up. All right, it's sold off. It made all-time highs again in January at $145. It's sold off to 128. I think if we had some stability today, I'd be a buyer. The closest I'd want my stop would be underneath the lows from January, perhaps even the other side of these lows from December. But for me, the trend on Apple is up. So for me, I would still be following the trend until we get a definite signal that it's over. And for me, just because it's fallen out of the trend line for a couple of days doesn't mean anything. Apple's been going up for years, as we all know. Why don't you cash in your pound against the dollar trade? For exactly what I just said back then. So hopefully that's cleared that up. I want to try and run that trend a bit longer. And, you can't argue with the trend on pound against the dollar at the moment. So I want to try and run it into next week and see what happens. See if we can go a little bit higher and make some more money. How do you get the Bitcoin USD on Capital? If you are a UK resident, you can't. Even though I've got it saved in my charts page, I can't actually trade it because I'm a UK resident. So if you're UK, you can't trade with any broker because of the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority ruling in January. Gold rally from here, okay. Blah, 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 blah. Palantir. We looked at these last week, didn't we? Because I remember thinking they were a drug stock, a weed stock. But they got hit. Did they get hit this week? I think I remember saying last week I thought they were a little bit crazy. I suppose. I mean, again, for me, it's a market that is too volatile. A stock that like I say, but at the risk of repeating myself, that goes from $25 to $50 in nearly a week is too volatile for me. If you're really aggressive, you could be a buyer here with a stop under the low from yesterday. But it's just too crazy. It's too crazy for me. Do you think natural gas is about to fall? No. I said, I think maybe you put the question in before we looked at it. For me, it's moving again. For me, what is the trend in natural gas? The natural gas trend is higher. So I am happy to stay long natural gas. Can we have a look at euro sterling? Yes. It's quite weak. I mean, the euro and the pound are strong against the US dollar. But the pound is stronger than the euro, if that makes sense. Look at that. So euro sterling. So the euro at the moment against the pound is at its lowest since March 2020. So was that 11-month low? It's interesting. I must admit, I thought it was going to snap back up from about 88 euro sterling. Clearly that's not the case. And we're carrying on. So it still looks weak. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting next week if it does get back to 80, 86. It's not far away now. I think maybe there's a bounce coming because it's quite strange to have such a protracted run in euro sterling. Let's see what happens. I don't trade it myself personally, But let's see what happens at 86 in euro sterling. So if I wanted to be a buyer, I'd still be waiting to buy I wouldn't be rushing in to buy it. It tends to be quite a dull, boring market, doesn't it? So I think if we really wanted to be a buyer of euro sterling, just be patient, I think. Qualcomm. Let's have a look. We looked at Qualcomm last week, didn't we? I remember saying, because the trend was up and blah, blah, blah. It looked like a buy. Let's have a look at Qualcomm. Oh, it just hasn't moved that much, really, has it? From a week ago, it's drifted a bit lower. The trend is still up, so the trend is up, isn't it? So if the trend's up, for me, I'd still be a buyer. Lots of support at 138 to 140. Are you more profitable on this account or on your own? What a really good question that is. I am more profitable on my own account because it's quite. This account is still up 70% since in 18 months. Okay, which is it's not a bad return at all. 3% a month, let's say. But on this account, the trades I do are dictated by the videos we do. Yeah, so we always do gold and silver videos, crude oil videos, Forex now and again, stock market videos, all that sort of stuff. But of course, in my own account, I don't do trades based on what videos I'm doing. I do trades on stuff that's moving. So like I said, on my own account, sugar, platinum, copper, great markets. But I use this account. It is real money. It's just Capital's money. I use this account for all the videos that we do that you'll see. And we'll put trades on based on these videos. But yeah, this month in my own account has been my best month ever. And it's because of just some of these trends in commodities have been absolutely brilliant. So I've been very surprised by this month's performance. So my own account, the style of trading is very similar to the trades I do on this account. Put an order in, or put a trade on, put a stop loss in. Don't have a target, run it, and trail the stop loss up. But I trade about 40 or look at 40 different markets for my own trading. Whereas with this, I tend to be restricted by the markets that our YouTube viewers find interesting. Yeah, which may not be moving. So I've got much smaller, maybe 10 markets or less in this account that I look at because I do it based on the videos. That was a really good question. So there you go. That's the answer to that one. Can we look at plug power and Ideanomics? Let's have a look. Plug power. I'm guessing that is some sort of electric doodah car thing. Hydrogen fuel. There we go. It's again, it's massively volatile, isn't it? So it touches 75 in January, back to 50. So it moves 30% in a month. Like I always say, I have a real problem with these volatile ones. The trend is up. Trend is up. So I'd be a buyer. The only question is where's the stop going to go? The closest I'd want the stop if I was a buyer today, underneath the lows of yesterday, $50, perhaps the other side of 45. So the trend is up, but pretty volatile. Ideanomics. What do they do? Monetizing the adoption of commercial electric vehicles. Okay. So let's have a look at that one. The trend is up again, but again, look at it. It got, what's that? $5.50 to yesterday, $3.60. So a $2 move, 40% move, pretty much. It wouldn't be one that I would trade again because of the volatility, but the trend, I suppose, the trend is up, isn't it? You could be a buyer with a stop under $3.50, but it's not one for me. But the trend is up, is what I'd say about that. How can I learn about trend, support, and resistance? If you go on our channel, go on our YouTube channel. I think I've done educational videos in the past, so there's a load of stuff there. But I think it's looking major trends and major levels. Should just jump out at you. I think you shouldn't have to squint at a chart for too long to figure out is a market a buy or sell. If we let's say take Bitcoin, the market I hate, for example. What's the trend in Bitcoin? You don't need a degree in astrophysics to figure out what the trend is in Bitcoin. The trend is clearly up, isn't it? The dollar's a bit more difficult, but if we were looking at the US dollar, in November, the trend was clearly down. So I think a lot of it is just really keeping it simple. Aluminium. I don't think we cover aluminium, and I haven't traded it either. Maybe I'm wrong. I am wrong. Oh, we've got it. We just don't. Oh, look at that. We've got it. You just can't trade it yet with us. So I think it is coming. We don't have much data, but again, I'm sure it is. And nickel, I keep reading, hits multi-year highs. But all these commodities, it is interesting what's happening with commodities at the moment. Whether it is the start of a massive bull run higher, or actually, is it just a bit of a short-term spurt? Can't really read too much into this one, but clearly the trend is strong. Tesla. Let's have a look. Tesla continue, I think, to underperform, don't they? I think we do have a trade. We've got an old trade on Tesla. Here we go. From the 14th of September, buying 3 1/3 shares at 400. And I've still got my 2 shares I bought when my son went to uni. It's just not getting a move on Tesla, is it? It's just edging. It seems to be just edging a little bit lower all the time. Clearly, the major trend is up on Tesla. If we pick up on the trend from March of last year, the longer term trend comes in around $500. It just seems to have lost an awful lot of momentum in the last month or so, when everything else is still going higher. So it's interesting, Tesla, but perhaps not surprising that it's sort of slowed, given how much it's gained over the last 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, whatever. So I wouldn't be a buyer now of Tesla. That's what I would say about that one. Can we look at cocoa? Yeah, we looked at cocoa, didn't we? Hang on a second. Oh, hang on. I've got a load more questions coming. Hold on a second. Tesla, we looked at that. Looked at cocoa. We got into cotton. Very good. Good trade, cotton. Looked at cocoa. Do more on oil. I got closed at 59.5. Wondering when to go back in. Well, I've got a trade on crude oil, and I am looking to get back in as well, and also add to my position. For me, on crude, the trend is up. It's been weak again today, crude oil. So for me, I think I mentioned one of my rules last week. If I want to buy into an uptrend, it's got to stop going down at the very least. And it's still going down on a daily basis. We've moved to a new low today. So I wouldn't be a buyer today. I wouldn't be a buyer on Monday. I think if we get some stability next week, then I'm going to think about being a buyer. But, big levels back here at 57 on crude. So if I was a buyer now, the closest I'd have my stop would be under 57. But I think that's an interesting market for next week, crude. So let's see. Blah, 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 blah. What about your course? I'm writing a trading course, which is going to be really good. So I'm about half the way through. I need to crack on with it and finish it. Soybeans. I've got a trade on soybeans as well, and it's not gone anywhere for a while. Soybeans. The trend does feel like it's slowed down on soybeans. It's not a market we cover, so I can't show you soybeans. Hang on a second. Let me have a quick look on my charting platform, because it was interesting. It was a great trend, and it just seems to have sort of died a death almost. Soybeans. Here we go. Let me just bring it up. Soybeans. Here we go. So this is just a third-party software I use. Here we go. That was the trend in soybeans. Hopefully you can see that. Fantastic trend from August last year. And then it sort of stalled. But I'd say the trend is still up for me, and I've still got a trade on. It just hasn't been moving much recently. These are all the different markets that I watch in there. But yeah, I think it's still up, the trend in soybeans. It's just been a bit flat for the last month. So what we need is a breakout through 1440 again. Let's see if we get it, but a little bit boring. We did uranium. I don't think can you actually trade uranium? Maybe you can. Uranium participation? Don't know. GME, someone's sure. What are your thoughts on gold miners such as Barrick Gold? We did do a video a few months ago on gold miners. We don't cover that one. I would get. Oh yes, we do. Sorry. I think I would guess that What's that happened there? Was it a share split there? You guess because the price of gold is weak, they're all under pressure, aren't they? So again, I think because we're seeing a bit of pressure on the gold price, there is a gold miners index that we can trade. What's it called? I can't remember. Is it the Van Eck Vectors Index? I've just spilt water all over my desk. Let's hope it doesn't get to the PC. Van Eck Vectors Gold Miners. Here we go. This is Gold Mining Index. I knew it. Gold Miners ETF. So it still looks weak, doesn't it? Because again, we're seeing this weakness in gold. So clearly the gold mine is going to be dragged down. So I think it's really important, this 1760 level for gold, to see if we can get a bounce. So maybe a bit more interesting times ahead for gold. Would it be the US Cannabis Index? Yeah, I did do a video this week on cannabis stocks. Really interesting, actually, in the end. I thought the cannabis sector, I do think that it looks quite positive. Some of those stocks we looked at, like Tilray was one, you know, it went crazy. I think, again, we had a bit of the Reddit effect going on with cannabis stocks the other week. But I think it looks interesting. What was the ETF? There was an ETF, HTF, what was it called? This was one, the Alternative Harvest ETF. So I covered this in the video this week. And I thought it looked interesting because we've seen a recovery in cannabis stocks since October last year. They went a bit crazy because of, I think, Reddit, Wall Street Bets, all of that. But the longer term trend was up. So I do think it's interesting, the cannabis sector, although I know nothing about it. You know, I think it's an interesting play for the rest of this year, cannabis. Let's see what happens. Aussie yen. Someone's saying Aussie yen is the better trade. That's a good point. Let's have a look at Aussie yen. That's an interesting point, that, because the Aussie is strong. Yeah, look at that move. And the yen is weak. Yeah, fair point, that is. Look at that. Aussie yen at its best levels since 2018. But again, a big move today. So another interesting FX market to watch. Do you trade with leverage? All the time. Everything I trade is CFDs or spread bets on the normal leverage levels. Gold. We did a trade on gold. So if you missed it, have a look at it. Can we have a look at PayPal? Yeah. PayPal. I haven't looked at those for a while. Let's have a look at the shares of PayPal. Again, you know, a great trend. You know, even though clearly with broader market weakness the last few days, they've all come off a bit. Great trend. You know, that we've got longer term trend line support down at 220. So again, if I was a buyer here, the only question is where's my stop going to go? But the long term trend for Bitcoin is still up. Palladium, I've got a trade on Palladium. It's been a bit boring, Palladium, lately. Great, it was great 2019. Absolutely brilliant. Look at that trend. Brilliant trends in Palladium from 2018 actually through to February, March last year. And it is, if we sort of looked at the move since the May lows, the trend is still up in Palladium, but it has underperformed versus stuff like platinum, for example. But the trend is still up, you know, so lots of support running from about 2,050 through to 2,200. Just a little bit boring of late. Do you think the pound strength is more to do with deflation and faith in the UK economy? I've got absolutely no idea, and I don't care. I do think that the UK economy could well be the surprise this year, but for me, just trade the price, you know. So I don't worry too much about the reasons why, because there'll be a million reasons why, won't there? And I think actually it's quite interesting that the markets I have done best in this year are the ones I know nothing about: sugar, cotton, copper. I've got absolutely no idea about those markets. Whereas I think markets you're familiar with, let's say crude oil, for example, I think it's crazy that crude oil was at $62 2 days ago, given the state of the economy. But it is, you know, and if that could have stopped me trading oil on the way up. So it's quite interesting, I think, that I try and not get bogged down in the reasons why. I mean, clearly we talk about the reasons why in the videos that we do, because people want that sort of stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't overthink it, would be my advice. Walmart, didn't they? Was it a big faller yesterday? Walmart, of course, the big US thingy. Yeah, I think that's an opportunity. Walmart, that gap lower yesterday, because again, massive uptrend, over the years in Walmart. Gapped lower. Was it results or something earlier in the week? An aggressive trade would be to be a buyer. Should we do that? Let's do a trade on a stock. So I would say an aggressive trade. We had a gap yesterday. We haven't had the follow through today. So I suppose an aggressive trade. We're going to be a buyer of Walmart. Where would our stop go? The closest I want my stop is the other side of these lows here. 134. These lows are 128. And so we go 131. So we'll buy Walmart with a stop at 131. So we'll put a stop, close at loss, 131. Let's see how that one does. We'll risk £100 as usual. So if I buy 10 shares, if I buy 19 shares at 138 with a stop at 131, my risk is 100 quid. There we go. So we buy. So I think let's come back to that and see how well that does over the week, the trade on Walmart. But the trade, it's been a bit sideways, clearly. Actually, it's been a bit sideways since August, isn't it, really? And I suppose if you were a fan of patterns, you might be able to see a Head and Shoulders or something in there. So for me, it needs to really get a move on from here. Otherwise, the risk is it will break lower. But for now, I think good support from September last year. Let's see what happens. Dollar Mexico. Dollar against the Mexican peso. Do we cover that one? Yes, dollar Mexico. So we had look at that. So massive dollar strength from February last year when a dollar would buy 18.6 pesos, bought 25.5 pesos in April. And now we're back to 20. A dollar buys 20 pesos. Again, I think the question is the US dollar, which has been weak since April last year against the Mexican peso, turning around? So I suppose an aggressive trade, a bit like that Russian ruble we looked at last week, or an aggressive trade, be a buyer at 20.4 with a stop the other side of 19.5, maybe, would be one trading idea. How do you find those moving markets that you trade? I just have a list. I have them in a watch list. And it's, you just decide what markets you want to trade, have a watch list, and I go through it maybe twice a week, and it doesn't take long. A couple of, I don't know, it doesn't take that long to flip through like we are today to see if there are opportunities. And I have so I have stock market indices, commodities, FX, 3 different groups. Pick a few markets from each and just watch them. And I think and you can see clearly when stuff starts moving. What else? Why do you hate Bitcoin? I joke about hating Bitcoin. I think it's a crazy market. I was around doing videos back in 2017 when Bitcoin, when the first mania of Bitcoin started. Yeah, back whenever it was. When it really, where's the daily chart? So I mean, hate is maybe too strong. I just think, like, back here, I remember doing videos on Bitcoin, and I've never really looked at it at all. I didn't even know what it was back in October 2017. And so you start doing some videos on Bitcoin because it's moving. It's like, oh, okay. I just thought it's just a stupid market. And I just think back then, a lot of people got really sucked in. It was like the GameStop of its day back then, where people who hadn't traded before, suddenly everyone wanted to trade Bitcoin. And lots of people lost a lot of money because they all ended up buying it like 15,000 and holding it. I suppose if they still hold it now, I don't know if they'd still hold it on leverage now. I just think it's a cult, a bit like Tesla, right? So Tesla, I've got shares in Tesla. I have actually got a Tesla. But the Tesla shareholders, it's a cult, isn't it? Where you can't say anything wrong. A bit like silver. Go back and look at some of the comments on our silver video. People are crazy. In some markets, it seems to attract quite a crazy contingent, and I think Bitcoin is one of them. Yeah, I don't hate it though, but I do think Bitcoin and GameStop, maybe Bitcoin not so much these days, but GameStop, those sort of things, it attracts people to trading who wouldn't normally trade, and it all ends in tears. But maybe Bitcoin is more established now. What do I know? I don't know, do I? Right, Tesla, Sterling yen. I've got a trade on sterling yen because somebody mentioned it 2 weeks ago, and I never looked at it before. I never look at it much, but I did a trade 2 weeks ago. So thanks to whoever mentioned that last time around. Sterling yen, like sterling against the dollar, great trend. 148 at the moment. Maybe we've got some problem areas coming up on sterling yen next week. It'd be interesting. We've got loads of resistance, 149 to 150. So it could struggle next week, but I am still long because of the trend, obviously. So I think perhaps we'll see it squeeze a bit higher. I just think we have to be careful as well, and I have to be careful about getting too carried away with this strength and thinking it's going to continue. I think you just need to be a little bit cautious going into next week. We're seeing a really strong pound, but perhaps, let's just be aware there are some problem areas coming up. It's probably clearer on sterling yen. So I think let's watch 150 next week on sterling yen. It wouldn't surprise me if we had a bit more to and forth, backwards and forwards next week on sterling yen. But let's see, I'm still long. I've got my stop trailing, so let's see what happens. We had a look at sterling yen. And why do people focus on gold against the dollar to trade and not gold, the Aussie dollar? I think, or gold against the euro. I think it's because the mark. I mean, in theory, you can trade gold in any currency, can't you? But the market tradition is that gold is quoted in dollars. So that's why I've never looked at gold in. I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head what gold is in pounds. But I think because the market tradition is market convention is gold in US dollars. That's why everyone looks at it in US dollars. But of course, you can trade it in everything else. Someone's asked for MJ. What's MJ? MJ. That's the thing we looked at. That is it, isn't it? That's the alternative harvest ETF. So that's the cannabis ETF. So Bumble. We looked at Bumble last week. They only came to the market last week, didn't they? And I think I said, just buy it if you really want to buy it, which wouldn't have turned out so well by the looks of it. So there we go. We've got 5 days worth of price data. I think with these new IPOs, I mean, what do? You just jump in and hope for the best, or you wait for things to calm down. I mean, for me, that's 5 days of data. An aggressive trade is to be a buyer now with a stop under the all-time low from a week yesterday at 68.70. So that's one idea, but it's a new float, isn't it? What can you do with these? AMD, we've been going for an hour now, so I'm going to start thinking about trying to wrap things up in the next 10 minutes. Let's have a look at AMD. Let's have a look. It's still, the trend is still up, isn't it? It's been a bit boring perhaps over the last few months or so, but lots of support at 84. It's a little bit dull at the moment. If I was a buyer now, I'd put a stop under 84 and see what happened. But that trend is still up, and nothing goes up every day, does it? So I think I take too much notice of the RSI. I tend not to buy in if it's ever overbought or undersold. Should I take less notice of it? I will say I never look at it. I look at it on the videos. I talk about it on the videos because people want to know about RSIs and stuff like that. I never look at it for my own trading because I think you're right. I think that's the problem. You can put too much weight on the RSI. Here's an example on AMD, 10-day RSI. If we were looking at this in July last year, maybe we wouldn't have bought it because the RSI was at an extreme. And of course, it just carried on going up. So yeah, I think you've got to find your own way, but I never look at it. American Airlines Group. What do we think? It's quite weird again, isn't it? It's really scrappy trading. I mean, I suppose you could argue, the trend is sort of up, isn't it? Or maybe it's just a bit sideways. Again, I mean, I would trade something else, but because it's just not enough direction at the moment. Delta Airlines. Is that Delta Airlines? That looks better, doesn't it? That looks a much better trend. So I would trade Delta over American Airlines at the moment. Got a nice little trend chugging along, moving to new highs, the highest since March last year. So that's an interesting one, I think. For me, trend is still up. Jubilee Metals is a good way to trade platinum. I've never heard of it myself. Let's have a look. And I don't know if we quote it. It might be too small. No, we don't quote it. We are in a bubble. Okay, fair enough. Euro stocks. Let's have a quick look at that. Again, I must admit this is one I never look at. Euro stocks 50. You'd think it would be broadly positive because the broader market is positive. There you go, it's up, isn't it? It's quite interesting though, I suppose. I remember from when we looked at the Australian index. The Australian index wasn't out to multi-year highs, and the Euro stocks is a bit the same. So the trend is up, but we haven't taken out last year's highs yet. You know, and you think of the S&P has. It's a bit boring, but you know, if you wanted to be a buyer, we're seeing a strong day today. We've got bullish engulfing for fans of candles. The closest I want my stop would be under yesterday's low. Probably a better stop is back here under the 10th of February low. So let's see. How is it with overnight fees for CFDs? You pay a fee because you're trading on leverage. So if I pick something like pound against the dollar, in the great scheme of things, it tends to be pretty small. But you can see here. So you can see on my screen here, pound against the dollar, long position overnight fee plus 0.001%. So if you held it, you're going to pay a fee. You'll see it. You'll see it on my account here. If I show you, because my account works like a normal account. There we go. I paid an overnight fee, a value for Alibaba of 24p. An overnight fee on the S&P I'm paying there. I'm paying 7p on the cannabis index. So of course it varies on the size of your position. But you know, with CFDs there are overnight fees, obviously, because you're trading on margin. Right. I think we are going to wrap things up there. No more questions. I'll wrap things up there. So what we'll do it again. We'll do it again next week. Obviously, let me find the contact details. We'll do it again next week. Lots to watch over the next week, though. Thanks for coming along. Apologies for the glitch we had at 2:30, and we had to start 30 minutes later. But go to Capital.com. Obviously, I'm doing this with Capital.com. That's the broker. That's the platform we've been using. Any questions, drop me an email, david.jones@Capital.com. You can follow me on Twitter @JonesTheMarkets. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You know, clearly, we are running this today on our YouTube channel. Lots of videos throughout the week on YouTube. So join in with that. And if you're subscribed with the alarm bell switched on, you'll get a notification off YouTube whenever we go live. Let's have a quick look. I've even forgotten what trades we did today. There's the cannabis trade from last week is losing money. The pound trade is up. What else did we do? Walmart. Oh, we're up £3 on the Walmart trade. And we're up £2 on the gold trade. So it's been a profitable live stream so far today. But lots to watch over next week, particularly with the strength in these commodities and gold bouncing around on its lowest. Oh, where's it gone, gold? Let's have a quick look at gold before we wrap it up and see what's going on. It is holding for now, but it's a really big level for gold going into next week. So I think it's going to be a really interesting week. We'll probably do a gold video next week, actually, because it is exciting again. But that's it. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much for coming along. Good luck with your trading, and we'll do it all again next Friday.